Just one housekeeping rule. You will not be able to actively contribute during this session, but you can type your questions in the chat and these will be addressed after the presentation. Asset Business Solutions Limited is an asset management company registered in Uganda in 2011. ABS aims to address the significant gap in the country and in Africa with regards to physical asset management. We develop and provide innovative and dynamic tools and solutions, enabling effective and efficient asset management for our clients. Asset Business Solutions helps organizations unleash their potential and the potential of their assets to drive the organization's performance with the goal of achieving an optimal return on investment. We are the pioneers of promoting the discipline of best asset management practices in the country. Asset Business Solutions is affiliated to the Institute of Asset Management in the UK and is a platinum partner to Hardcat Australia, who are the pioneers of digital asset management. During the 10 years of our operations, we have observed that a vast majority of both private companies and public institutions have a reactive approach to asset management, implying that they do not have good asset management practices. At Asset Business Solutions, we would like organizations to check themselves and know the state of their asset management competence so that they can embark on a roadmap to better asset management and know what they need to do. These webinars aim to help organizations know what is required to move away from reactive and inefficient asset management practices and start on the journey and progress incrementally to achieve proactive and more efficient practices. Our speaker for today is Chris Kacho Emmanuel. Chris Kacho is in the management team at Asset Business Solutions Limited, heading the Asset Management Solutions division. He has served at the company for over 10 years now. He holds a qualification from Uganda Management Institute for Inventory Management and the Institute of Asset Management in the UK for Asset Management. He's an affiliate member of the Institute of Asset Management, the body for the asset management professionals. He has given asset management advisory and has managed numerous asset management improvement projects in the private and public organizations since joining the company. Chris Kacho is one of the leading trainers of asset management at Asset Business Solutions Limited. Chris Kacho, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Elijah. I hope everyone can see me. That's who I am. And I'm happy to have you for this particular webinar. Greetings to everyone. I appreciate that you have been able to join this call because we tried to have this call earlier and for some reasons we were not able to host you at that time. So apologies again, but yes, I'll dive straight into our business today, which is why we are here today. That is, we are here to see as ABS how we can impart knowledge to our audience to this morning on how to improve your fixed assets register. And we shall be looking at the 5 key factors to consider when you're doing this. Like I say, the objective of this is really to start organizations on the conversation of how they can begin to look at asset management or fixed asset registration as a key ingredient or as a key element of their business activities. Yeah, so we'll be looking at the 5 key factors to consider when you begin your your journey to fix your asset register. So what shall we be looking at today? In the content for today, we'll be looking at the introduction. I'll try to highlight the importance of a fixed asset register. Then I will give you the 5 key factors, which is my promise this morning. Then I will just summarize the highlights of what I will have talked about so that you can just get an overview of my presentation to this morning. Because I'm doing this presentation from a health facility where I am in Kwania, just in case there's any noise interruption, please bear with me, but I fairly think that we shall be safe to go. So let's start with an understanding of what a fixed asset register is. And for us to get that understanding, what we want to do is to use a common definition for this kind of thing. The fixed asset register is an organization's record of data and information of assets it owns, which is necessary to support asset management. Over there, I think very many accountants will be very familiar with what they see there. It's just an Excel spreadsheet which is formatted with some of the key information that you might see in a typical asset register. Yeah, so very many accountants will be aware of that, or even other people in the administration sector will be aware of what a fixed asset register really looks like. It's just a register or a record of your asset data or asset information. So what are the types of fixed asset registers that can be present in any organization? There are basically two types of fixed asset registers, and you'll see why these are generally two types. The first type is the financial stroke accounting fixed asset register. As you can see over there, it really considers the financial accounts and management accounting for the business. So in there, you have things like costs, depreciation, and things like that, because it is important to know for accounting purposes, you need to have those particular elements embedded in your fixed asset register. However, the second type is non-financial, meaning it has mostly technical and operational asset data and information. Most of these types of fixed asset registers are really typically the ones you will find, say, for the engineers or for the operations departments. And then the finance guys will have mostly the financial or the accounting type. So I'll go ahead to just to highlight why you need a fixed asset register before I dig into the 5 considerations that you have to have in mind for you to be able to improve your fixed asset register. And we're really talking about this because our observation is, as Asset Business Solutions, we have observed over the 10 years of our experience that fixed asset registers really are quite an issue. And it's only until organizations start to realize the real need for a fixed asset register that they might be able to start considering fixing or improving their fixed asset registers. So why do we need a fixed asset register to start with? Let's start with the accountants and auditors. The accountants and auditors really need the fixed asset register to do accurate calculation of their balance sheet, of the organization. Now, the balance sheet really is in a different way, you can look at it as the financial position of a company at a particular date. It has a reference date. And usually these reference dates are usually, you'd say maybe after a quarter or at the end of an accountability period. So at the end of that accountability period, all companies have to prepare a balance sheet which enables other people to understand the financial position of that. And the auditors and accountants will need a fixed asset register, a reliable fixed asset register, so that they can understand the assets and the liabilities as far as that is concerned. So I've grouped these ones broadly as accountants and auditors, but you'll realize that also the accountants will need these to apply appropriate depreciation sets or amounts, which is very key for a key need for a fixed asset register. Without that, you may not be able to apply the appropriate depreciation sets. Then, yes, you also need to be able to use the fixed asset register. The organizations that really know the value of a fixed asset register, they'll be able to procure insurance and manage their claims properly, because they're not really basing on speculative value information, but they are relying on, if you're going to insure your assets, you're really relying on a fixed asset register, which has reliable data in terms of the value that you're going to insure, as that also affects your insurance amount. So that is for the accountants and auditors. I'll quickly go to another kind of people who might need the fixed asset register. These are maintenance and operations personnel or engineers. Why do these ones need the fixed asset register? The fixed asset register enables them to do easy identification of equipment by name or number, to communicate maintenance and operational needs. If you do not have these fixed asset registers, it's not going to be very possible for you to carry out proper maintenance schedules, or operations schedules. So the maintenance guys need that. They'll also need that to effectively plan and schedule the maintenance activities. So that is another really key need for a fixed asset register. They also need to identify underperforming assets, and this helps to determine reliability improvement requirements. For those of you who've attended our earlier webinars, you will know that the main aspect of asset management really is to do is to obtain value from them. If they're not reliable, it's very unlikely that you'll have reliable improvement kind of criteria for you to be able to know where you need to improve your assets. And so, which other people will need an asset register? There are external stakeholders, and for the external stakeholders, look at certain people who need to identify equipment requiring mandatory maintenance. I've given an example of an extinguishing machine over there, but there are other examples that require mandatory maintenance. These will include lifts, or you could also have other equipment like safety or smoke detectors, sorry. The picture over there is what you see is that of a smoke detector. So external stakeholders need to look at your asset register for these particular items and see the kind of whether you're actually conducting mandatory maintenance on them. And that is where a fixed asset register becomes very important. You're not going to be very speculative and tell them that you're doing this kind of thing, but you cannot point them to a register where you can tell them, yes, I last did this. I have 50 kind of extinguishers I'm trying to do maintenance on. And yes, I last did them at this particular date. But then also the external stakeholders will need that to schedule the maintenance, to verify that the required maintenance has been performed. That is very key ingredient of your need for a fixed asset register. They'll get that kind of information from your fixed asset register. Then other external stakeholders who will need a detail on which you can only obtain from a fixed asset register will be accountability. When you're doing accountability, especially for the NGOs, for donors, or any funding support. Usually these organizations or these funding organizations will support you to support other organizations with different kind of equipment or assets. And at some point, you really have to account whether you've actually done the distribution of those or any other accounting requirement. The NGOs will be very familiar with this kind of requirement. So a fixed asset register becomes a very, very key element of their operations. I've only highlighted a few of these. So there are very many other stakeholders, external, who might need the fixed asset register or your organization's fixed asset register. And that is just to highlight some of the key people who might need the fixed asset register. I'll quickly go to the common challenges, and perhaps that is the real reason why we're here. The common challenges of fixed asset registers. is what I'm going to discuss now. Over there, I see a man, but I don't think he looks so much like me, though he's putting on specs. But that man over there thinks that fixed asset registers are really a headache. Very many people will actually share that. We've seen that fixed asset registers in very many organizations are a headache. And it's really because most of the times they do not know exactly where to put their fingers on to start improving their fixed asset register. So what are observations and why is it a headache? One, most of the times it's incomplete data. You'll find that up to 50% or even much more than that, you have organizations with incomplete data. Now with incomplete data, you cannot carry out good, let's start with asset management. You cannot conduct good asset management because you need that data to conduct or to carry out asset management or data-driven asset management decisions. So without data and you have incomplete data, well, your asset register is always going to be a very big headache to you. Then another element of why it comes out as a very big headache is you have many companies, because of their systems they might have in place to manage their fixed asset registers, they have inaccurate data. And this inaccurate data usually comes because you have either manual entry or it could be a people problem where maybe the person doing the data entry isn't as meticulous or with data as or does not really understand the real need for this data that they're trying to input. So that is our observation, and very many people on this call, I'm sure, can feel me on why this thing is really a headache for very many organizations. Then we've realized that very many fixed asset registers have inconsistent data. The inconsistent data, you'll find some people, if someone is entering or registering a printer, they might generally call it a printer under name, for example, name of the item. Then another person will directly call it an Epson. So because of that, it's going to be very hard to use your asset register, especially when you're trying to dig down for critical information or categories of assets to be able to make asset management decisions around them. So one of the other headache is delayed update of fixed asset register, because you really don't have the good means to do that, the good systems or tools to use that, and or you don't have the necessary people to do that. You have delayed update of the fixed asset register. That affects very many things. It also affects, like we saw up earlier, it affects your balance sheet or your reporting on the balance sheet. You'll usually, as a fixed asset accountant, be the one delaying the report. And as you can see, that is where there's the delayed, stressful reporting. All those are aspects of the fixed asset register and how they can really be a headache. I believe very many of you on this call will appreciate that, yes, these are real issues when it comes to the fixed asset register. So I'll use the next 20 minutes to quickly go through the how you can improve the 6 factors you're going to consider to improve your fixed asset register. But quickly, before I do that, I would like to put the element of the fixed asset register in the context of what we've earlier discussed, in the context of proper asset management journey. So those of you who might have attended our earlier webinar will be familiar with this slide where I shared the first steps to consider when you are starting on your asset management journey. Now, your asset management journey is a broader element of asset management. So where does the fixed asset register fall in this particular space? Okay, as you can see, we looked at the people, the strategy and planning. We looked at I'll see if I can just highlight these elements here. We looked at people, strategy and planning. We did decision making as one of the things you really need to consider. We looked at asset information and life cycle delivery, as well as risk management. So where does the fixed asset register fall in this kind of environment? So as you can see under item number 4, which is the asset information, where you have to determine your data and information requirements. That is where this thing called the fixed asset register falls. And it is what we are now just pulling out and saying, okay, how do you deal? What are the factors to consider to deal with them? So we now go to my promise for this particular morning, which are the 5 factors. And I will go through them. Now that I've given you the key background to this, you'll find it easier to understand these 5 elements that I'm going to talk about. And the first one we're looking at is purpose. And we are looking at, we're going to look at these factors to consider using a basic approach, usually to strategy. And that strategy, as you'll see later, includes all the other elements that you're going to see later, but does not highlight purpose. But I've included purpose here as the main key starter, because without purpose, you cannot understand why you have to do any strategic intervention. So purpose is a very key element for you to consider when you are starting to fix your fixed asset register. What is the purpose of me sorting out this fixed asset register? Because purpose helps you, it gives you direction. Without direction, you may not know where or what you're trying to do. And one of the purposes, as we've seen earlier, is you want to fulfill your needs that you have determined for a fixed asset register. Maybe it's going to be compliance, maybe it's going to be maximizing value, maybe it's going to be reporting or quick reporting, or maybe it's going to be all the other aspects that we've seen earlier. Then yes, the other purpose we know is it should be able to help you conduct or rather use your data or your fixed asset register to conduct or to make asset management decisions. If you don't have a basis or data-driven platforms to make decisions, you are going to be a gambler most of the times as far as management is concerned. Then, of course, we said you need it for statutory compliance and reporting, but then also you need, as we saw, ultimately, for you to be able to extract value from your assets. That is the first purpose. The first key factor you want to consider. So before you register, please define your purpose. I'll now go to the second element you need to consider, which is information. You need to have this particular information criteria to be able to fix your asset register. And we know already that the information, we are looking at it as asset data and information. Usually, information will be a combination of data. A combination of data gives you a particular piece of information. So if you're going to make information could be a highly performing generator, that is information. But how are you deriving at the aspect that this is a highly performing generator? That means you've combined two sets of data. One data is going to be about performance, and one data set is going to be about your improvement kind of schedules for that, how you've been scheduling that. So you need to understand what are your information requirements, what are your data requirements. So as an immediate term goal, when you are starting to fix your fixed asset register, do one thing: define your data requirements. And this can be collaborative. Like we saw, the fixed asset register really combines the finance guys, the operations guys, and the maintenance guys. For them to speak on a basic platform, you need that basic platform to be collaborative data, so that if you have 20 generators being as the generators that the engineering guys know, even the financial accountants must have 20 generators on their FAR. And so it's not going to be possible unless you define your data as a collective, and the collective here being the different departments that might be existent in your organization. Otherwise, you'll find the administration guys focusing on only their kind of data that they require, and they ignore the finance data, or the engineering guys will focus on their operations or maintenance data and forget about the other information that the finance guys want. So as an immediate term goal, when you're starting to fix your fixed asset register, define your data requirements. I'll need this kind of data for me to be able to do that. So determine the scope of data and determine how consistent your data sets have to be. So that is where you do not have your data sets. Maybe you're saying, okay, the hierarchy of your data sets, you're saying you have printers maybe, and the printers are being categorized under this kind of naming nomenclature, or any other aspects that help you get consistent information. It's not going to be a printer this time, and then someone else has to search for it as an Epson. You need your data kind of requirements and define the fields around that. So the other aspect you need to have in mind when you are starting to fix your fixed asset register is the element of how comprehensive your data is. So you need to conduct, and that should be a short-term goal after you've determined your requirements. After determining your requirements, now the short-term goal, you need to, as a very key element, conduct a comprehensive asset data capture exercise. This data capture exercise basically will be based on how you define your requirements in terms of your data. So do that. Then quickly, the medium-term goal will be for you to be able to do a data completion project to clean up historical records. Now that data completion, because you now have a comprehensive data capture exercise, you want to understand how this new information relates to your existing information. For example, that information might be resident in your finance system, which you use to report. So if you're using that finance system to report, you probably want to use as a medium-term goal to update your asset information in that particular system, or any other system that might be holding your asset data. That can be done as a medium-term goal. The important aspect really would be to understand, what do you start with? Define your data requirements, conduct a comprehensive asset data capture exercise, and do some cleaning up your fixed asset register. You can already see that we're now moving to a point of having a cleaner data in your asset register. So what is the other element that you want to consider when you are cleaning up your asset register? The people. These are very important as far as asset management is concerned. Why are they important? Because they help to drive your agenda as far as broadly fixed asset management is concerned, but as far as obtaining the purpose of your fixed asset register. So what are some of the things you need to consider? You need to have a dedicated lead person to be able to have oversight, or to be responsible for your output on fixing the fixed asset register. So you need a dedicated lead person, meaning that there are other people you will need. You will need a collaborative team approach to be able to sort your asset register. If you sat on a table and discuss with your maintenance guys, you discuss with your operations guys, you'll be able to define your data requirements and your fixed asset register requirements, and then this person will lead into the formulation of your fixed asset register. Then you need to assign responsibility, and you need timely updates, because this person has to conduct timely updates of your fixed asset register. You need someone responsible for that, because that becomes the headache when you are not able to do your fixed asset register is not able to be updated in a timely manner, simply because you do not have an assigned responsibility. Now, the next element is actually very key in terms of your fixed asset register. We've observed that many organizations have their fixed asset register managed at the central element, but then they do not have the other locations. For example, the other entities understand, for example, if you have branches, the branches do not understand the kind of fixed asset register or the information that they have attached to their branch. In other words, all you do is dispatch assets to that branch, and they do not have accountability for those assets that you have dispatched there. So even the stakeholders need to know why the fixed or the local fixed asset register, wherever they are, or even if it is an individual, if Chris has assets belonging to the company, he needs to manage even his own assets in a very, very proactive manner, so that it helps inform your fixed asset register ultimately. So that is an aspect. So the other aspect you really want to do is to be able to do, the people will help you drive your agenda, because you have periodic reporting, which won't be delayed. And yes, that will help you, fix your asset register. Without people, you're probably not going to achieve much in terms of, you will be really a lone trooper trying to fix something. At the end of the day, it's going to be a very big headache for you. So I'll go quickly to the next element, which is technology. Technology is a very key aspect when you're trying to fix your asset register. What technology are you using to keep your fixed asset register? And what's the purpose of this? It enhances your data collection and sharing. So the technology that you're using enables you to enhance that. What are the available technologies? We know we have spreadsheets, but we also know that these are very unstable. We also know that they are vulnerable to staff exit. When a staff exits, the one who has been managing your spreadsheet, just know that you need another year for just someone to get their head around whatever formula they put in an Excel spreadsheet, or whatever outlook they have on the spreadsheets, which might be quite a headache. But what are the other technologies that people can use? They can use accounting software, e.g. QuickBooks. Some of them will have fixed asset modules. Then you have enterprise resource plans, e.g. SAP or Oracle and Sun. Some of the big companies will be aware of these ERPs, which are integrated platforms, which integrate all their functions into one. So that's one of the functions might be asset management. The other technology that you can use would be standalone asset management software systems, e.g. It can be Maximo. That is usually mostly maintenance guys really like that. But then there can be others like Hardcut. I'm quite familiar with that because we as ABS, we represent them. Then we have others like ArcPlus. These are standalone software. And ArcPlus is actually is a proprietary software developed by ourselves, really trying to understand, to look at the basic requirements for you to be able to have a reliable fixed asset register. The key word being reliable fixed asset register. So that is technology. So now look at the last element to consider, which would be your processes. And these processes are very important for you to consider when you're doing your asset management, because they underpin the major success of your fixed asset register. So what are the processes we are looking at? Like I say, they underpin because they help you have coordinated activities. Without these processes stipulated, you may not have coordinated activities. And what are some of these coordinated activities you really want to be looking at? The coordinated activities will be cross-departmental processes. Asset traffic occurs across the whole entire organization. But what are some of the processes you want to put in place that help you to pick information that quickly enables you to conduct an asset register update? So those are cross-departmental processes. You need to ensure that those are going on. Then you need to ensure that you have a process for ongoing data accuracy. That should be a continuous process to clean up your data or your asset register. You need a process to manage new acquisitions so that immediately you are able to update your fixed asset register. You will need a process for asset movements, and these are quite a headache because assets move in terms of one location. They move in terms of, and locations can be at organizational level. That is where you have the head office, but then you also have the branches. Assets move in between those locations, but then they can move into within the different, between different people or between different departments or between different other entities where assets are changing the real accountability at that particular time. So you need processes that define that, okay, if you're going to take away a laptop, which I'm using, what is the process for me to remove this laptop that I'm using and say this new location will be our repair center? Because the moment you do that, you have a process for that, it enables you to quickly update your asset information so that when you know it is at the repair center, the asset is no longer with Chris Kacho. So it is definitely now at a new location, which will be the repair center. And there are all these different processes that you really need to determine and define. The moment you determine and define them and all the stakeholders are aware of them, then it will be much easier for you to improve your fixed asset register. Then you need a process for updating the fixed asset register. That is the ultimate thing. How do I update my fixed asset register? When you know that, and the person involved in doing that, they'll know that the accountability really is really going on in a very coordinated manner as far as improving your fixed asset register is concerned. So what I've done is I've looked broadly at the 5 factors to consider. So if you're going to say you're going to fix your fixed asset register, in summary, this is how we look at any strategic intervention. For any strategic intervention, and now the strategy is the objective of the strategy is to improve the fixed asset register. So what are those elements that we always have to think about when you're doing those strategic information? As you can see here, you will have the information as being a key element, which we've talked about. We've talked about people. We've talked about processes. We've also talked about technology. What you are not really seeing, and this is the common strategy pyramid that very many people on this platform will be aware of. The other element would be, which we've learned to add as strategists, because it's also a key vital ingredient, and which is what I started with, is the purpose. Because without defining the purpose of why you're doing all these activities, it's going to be very, very unlikely that you're able to fix your fixed asset register. Yeah, I believe that is what I had to share for now. I'll hand over to Elijah to take us to, in case there are any questions, I'll gladly take them. Elijah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your in-depth knowledge on the 5 considerations that will help us improve our asset registers. I think just to remind the people, the 5 considerations are purpose, information, people, technology, and processes. Chris, only one question came through. And okay. The question is, how do we reflect small assets which fall below the threshold of our asset policy, since they cannot be in the fixed asset register?
That's a very interesting question. And I'll start with the end of that question. The question says, since they cannot be on the fixed asset register. Now, I'll shock you. I would like to think they can actually be on your fixed asset register. Depending on how you configure your fixed asset register, you actually need to track even these small items that do not meet your value criteria in terms of the amount, how you expense them and things like that. You only have to configure your asset and name them a particular kind of type. Maybe what you're going to call them is what do you want to call them? You're maybe going to call them non-fixed asset, because the fixed asset definition, according to your policy, is going to be any item above a certain amount of value. But we all know that actually we need to track every asset that helps us deliver the business objectives. And some of those will be assets that do not meet the value criteria, okay? So yes, you can actually include them, but just define them elsewhere as a different class. You can call them non-fixed, non-FAR items according to your policy. In other words, they fall on the general register you have, but you can quickly sort out the fixed asset register because they meet your value criteria, and then the non-financial, the non-fixed asset register, which are those assets that do not meet your value criteria. I don't know what's that question, but thank you very much for that question. It's something that we observe that very many organizations don't have a way of knowing how to handle this. And what they do is the assets are really free roaming, they get lost, and just because a certain item does not meet their value criteria, yet it enables Chris Kacho to be able to perform another activity which brings value, it gets lost, and then because it's not being tracked, business performance will definitely be affected. So you can actually track those smaller value items by just including them on the fixed asset register, but you probably want to define them very differently. I hope that responds to the person who asked that question.
I think
Elijah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Another question has come in.
Okay.
How often can someone do periodic reporting on assets?
Periodic reporting on assets. I'll give you another interesting answer. Because we need asset registers on a daily basis, reliable fixed asset registers. That means that on a daily basis, I must be able to report on the fixed asset register on a daily basis. But that is ideal, depending on what systems you have to update it. Otherwise, organizations that have good systems will be able to update so that if Chris Kacho has to make a decision on purchase of laptops, I can really go to the recent fixed asset register report that I'll request from my junior who handles the fixed assets. So yes, that is one way of looking at it. However, depending on your requirement for reporting on fixed assets, even while you can do it on a daily basis, depending on what systems, you can choose to do it on a monthly basis, just because maybe that is when it is critical for you to be able to present asset information to your supervisor, for example. Maybe that is because they do monthly evaluations of their assets. Otherwise, the reporting really cannot be cast in stone because different organizations need different reporting periods on their assets. For some, you'll find that actually even just a year will be enough. However, for assets, for companies that asset driven in terms of making decisions, and those will usually be, for example, the utility companies. You really don't want to base your decision on a report that comes out monthly, because within that month, really, the traffic on those assets has been so large that you may not be making a reliable or a good decision. Let's use a good decision to qualify the decision. Elijah, over to you, and I hope I've answered that question satisfactorily.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think those are all the questions we have gotten today. Just something for the participants to take note of. The recording of this webinar will be sent as long as the slides for the presentation. I think we have all your emails if you registered, but if you didn't, you can put your email in the chat and we'll take note of it. Asset Business Solutions is pleased to invite you to participate in an asset management training. The title of this training is Beyond Compliance, documenting and effectively implementing asset management controls. This training will take place this September at Mistil Hotel. There are 2 sets of dates you can choose from, 14th to 15th September 2022 this year, or 21st to 22nd September. Just a little more about the training. This training will aim to introduce and or enhance the knowledge of you, the participants, about the new outlook of the discipline of asset management with the emergence of the ISO 55000 series, which was established in 2014. We'll also talk about its application and how to maximize value realization. This training will provide useful insights, resources, and opportunities for implementing better asset management programs. The special focus will be placed on documenting and effectively implementing asset management internal controls. This training is open to all staff, both in private and public enterprises. This staff could be from finance, audit, procurement, risk, compliance, IT, administration, or even grants departments. Feel free to contact me or Chris or Sanyu, or you could leave your email and request for more information on this training. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. Let me play a video of the training. We held a training previously. Let me play a quick video. Maybe you can be interested. It might interest you. That's a bit about the upcoming training. I've received a couple of emails. These have been taken note of. We will communicate the information. We'll also send you the presentations for today. Thank you very much once again for attending this webinar. We'll hold another webinar, I think before the end of this year. The dates of that will be communicated. Chris, Sanyu, do you have anything else to add in these last minutes?
Maybe Elijah, I'll just add a quick one. I can encourage the participants for today's webinar. They can continue to ask their questions, then we shall respond to them at a later forum, or we can respond to them personally. Otherwise, I'd like to thank them for joining this call to listen to me. Back to you, Elijah.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. Are there any more questions? I don't think there are any more. I think if there are any more questions, they can be communicated by email. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. We will communicate about the next steps. Thank you.